Hi, this is Bill Raymond. Have you ever written software code? If you have, then you know that it's a little difficult to maintain after a while. That's why you might use some source control software like Git. And then if you start adding features, wanting to collaborate with others, fix bugs, you're probably going to need to start branching out your code and doing all sorts of other things with it. And so at some point, you're probably going to use something like GitHub in order to manage all of that. Now, one of the cool things about GitHub is if you create a software product, you could have a web page for it. Maybe it's the docs for your website. Maybe it's just a website advertising the product to sell what you're making. Or maybe you're creating a website just for your resume to show people what you do. And if you want to do that, you can host free websites using GitHub Pages. Now, GitHub Pages requires very specific versions of software to be installed on your computer. As of the creation of this video, that would be Jekyll 3.9.3, and it would be Ruby at least version 3.1.2. Now, as this video gets older, I'm sure there'll be newer versions, and I actually have created this video so that I can help you understand that if those versions change. Now, let's talk a little bit about what it takes in order to get this set up on your computer. What you'll need to do is install a whole bunch of software on your computer. You're going to need to install the Ruby programming language. You're going to need to install Jekyll. And there's going to be a number of other dependencies that has. Now, if you're a software developer and you might have multiple Ruby projects, maybe you are a Ruby developer, or maybe you have all sorts of other software development code on your computer, you know that it's hard to maintain a computer that works and is fast and is efficient if you have all these tools on it. Then what happens if you purchase a new computer? You have to set it all up again. So why not just install everything in sort of a templated format? And that's what Docker provides. And that's the core of this conversation in this video. I'm going to show you how to set up GitHub Pages on your computer, but without having to install all these dependencies directly on your computer. We're going to store them as a template. What does all this mean? Well, let me walk you through it. First of all, what you'll do is you'll have your working computer. This is the one that you are sitting in front of right now. Right now, I have a Mac sitting in front of me. You could have Windows, Mac, most versions of Linux. And then what you do is install Docker on top of that. And Docker will allow you to create these Docker images. Inside those images, you'll put all those software dependencies in there. As a matter of fact, you're even going to put an operating system in there, because we're not going to use the host operating system necessarily. We're going to use Ubuntu as our operating system. But don't worry, we're not installing like some desktop version of this. We're not doing a virtual machine. What we're doing is we're just installing the terminal. And if you're not sure what that means, don't worry, you'll see a little bit later. And inside of that image, we'll also install Ruby and Jekyll and all the elements that are required in order to make GitHub Pages work. Finally, we'll have a container, and that container is where we can do our software development. So this is where we're going to start, is creating that image, where there's a few prerequisites that you need to install on your computer. You can do this on a Mac, Windows, or Linux, as I said. I'm going to be using a Mac. I'll try to remember to tell you the right keyboard shortcuts and things like that, but hopefully you already know your way around Visual Studio Code a little bit, because that is one of our prerequisites. So let me just step you through this right now. If you happen to know what I'm talking about, you already have Docker installed, you already have Visual Studio Code installed, things like that. You already understand how to work with dev containers. Then just use the scrubber on the YouTube video and get to where you need to go. Also, all of the steps that I provide are listed in the description as well. Go to git-scm.com and download the version for your computer. You might be wondering why you need this for your computer. Well, that's because even though we're going to be doing our work in a Docker container, there are times when you might want to just edit the files without using Docker, and you can do that, but you are going to need Git. Go to code.visualstudio.com and download the version for your operating system and chipset. Go to github.com and sign up for a free account. Make sure you sign in all the way because there might be a few extra steps that are required before you're fully signed up. Go to docker.com and sign up for a free account. Make sure you download the latest version of Docker Desktop for your operating system and chipset. A little later in this video, I'm going to show you a very important area that you are going to have to focus on in the Docker app to make sure you're fully signed in. Earlier in this video, I suggested you install Git on your computer because that way you can edit the files locally. You just won't be able to run Jekyll without running the Docker container, but you'll at least be able to edit files. And so if you already installed Git on your computer, but it's your first time and you're not familiar with it, I suggest you go to the git-scm.com page, click on this ProGit book, which is actually an online book, and you'll find there's section 1, Getting Started, and it says Installing Git and First Time Git. I suggest you follow through those 2 sections before continuing the video. It's super easy and should only take a few minutes. Now I'm running Docker Desktop. I want to point out on the top left corner here, we have containers, images, and volumes. Notice that when I select these, there are no images, containers, or volumes on my computer. I don't use Docker yet, so right now it's nice and clean. If you have Docker images on your computer right now, then I suggest you make note of the images, containers, and volumes, because I'm going to do some bulk deletion later in this video, and I'd hate for you to accidentally delete something that you're working on. At the top right-hand corner of the desktop app, you'll notice that I am signed in. So remember earlier I suggested that you create a Docker account and make sure you're signed in. You also need to do it in this app. If you haven't done those steps yet to create the account and also sign in on the desktop app, do that now. Now I'm in Visual Studio Code, and I'm going to need 2 extensions to run through the training in this video. So I need to click on the extensions icon, which might look like a little puzzle piece, and select that. Now I'm going to search for Docker and press return. I'll select that and make sure that it says Microsoft with that official checkbox and select install. I'll close this and come back to the search bar and type dev container. I'll select that and choose install and close this. And now I'll close the extension item by just selecting it once more. Now, if you're familiar with using Git and committing files in a very specific way, you can go ahead and do that. However, in this video, I'm going to be using a very simple way of committing files. So I'm going to go to the gear icon here and choose settings. In the search bar, I'm going to type use editor as commit input. And if you see a checkbox here, deselect that. If this is not something you want to use because you're already familiar with using Git, then you don't need to. Just understand the way I'm going to use Git and Visual Studio Code in this video might be different than the way you do it. Okay? Close settings, and now you need to quit or do a file exit of Visual Studio Code so it's completely shut down before you continue. So I'm going to go ahead and quit Visual Studio Code now. Okay, we quit Visual Studio Code and we're back in again. You might have noticed that there are those extensions over here on the left. You're really not going to need them for purposes of this video, but there are options there that you can take a look at later. What we need to do is create a folder that's going to hold our website, and it's also going to be where our Docker container lives. So let's go over to the Explorer. I have that selected at the top left here, and choose Open Folder. Now, if you don't see this option, just go to the File menu and choose Open Folder. So I'll select this. I'll go to my desktop. I will select New Folder, and I'll create a new folder. I'm going to call this GitHub Pages with Docker. Now, this is really important that we use these dashes. Have you ever seen a website URL that has spaces in it and it gets replaced with like %20 and things like that? We don't want that. And have you ever seen a website with underscores in it and it's kind of hard to see if there's an underscore or if it's just a space? That's why I like to use dashes. So at least for purposes of this demonstration, we're going to do a dash in between where we normally put a space. So click the Create button and open the folder. Before we set up our Docker file, I want to show you two things. One, I want to explain why we're using Ubuntu over something else. And then the other thing that I want to show you is how to find that Ubuntu image, that Docker image. So let's get started with the first part, which is this is the Jekyll RB site. This is the official Jekyll website. And you can see that the operating systems that are supported are Mac OS, Ubuntu, other Linux, and Windows. Now, I know that if I'm using Docker, then I might want to use maybe Windows or Mac OS since I'm on one of those computers. However, that might mean that there's a licensing issue later. And if you ever want to use what we call GitHub Actions, or maybe you have other kind of CI/CD processes that you might follow, then that could get in the way by using a third party, if you will, a licensed tool instead of a free and open source operating system. So that brings us to Ubuntu and other Linux. Well, I did a video just like this one for other Linux. And guess what? That other Linux actually removed some dependencies that we need in place for Jekyll to run. So I kind of decided I'm making this video for you to use Ubuntu because it seems to be pretty solid. And there's a version out there that I really like that seems to do really well. Okay, so I explained that. So now let's go to the Docker Hub. To get there, go to hub.docker.com. And in here, you will find repositories of all sorts of images that you could use. Come up to the search bar and type Ubuntu and press return. You'll see a list of images that either are of the Ubuntu operating system or apps that use the Ubuntu operating system and have already layered their technology on top of it. Now, I'm going to come over here to the trusted content section on the left, and I'm going to choose Docker official image. Now I can see there is a Docker official image for Ubuntu, which means that it's following best practices and is managed and maintained by Docker. So this means that we have a good sense that this is going to be a high quality image. Also down here, you can see all the different operating systems and chipsets it supports. Just by the way, ARM64, that's becoming popular with Windows. However, this is actually the same technology that you'll see for Apple Silicon. And x86 is one of the most popular for a Windows computer. If I go ahead and click on this, then I can see some more details about this image. Notice that it says Docker pull Ubuntu, and it's just Ubuntu, one word with no extra stuff. Make note of that because we'll be using that later. And then also, if I come over here to tags, you'll notice that you can actually select the version of Ubuntu you want. Now, these tags will come in handy in just a moment, and I'll explain how that works. Okay, we're in Visual Studio Code. We have the GitHub Pages with Docker folder open, you can see right here. And I'm going to right click on this. We're in the Explorer view. I'm going to choose New File, and I'm going to type Docker file. And the way you want to do this is you want to capitalize D for Docker, and the rest of it is Docker file with one word. Okay, so I'll press return, and you'll notice that the little Docker whale icon shows up. So Visual Studio Code automatically noticed that that's what we're doing is we're creating a Docker file to define what the image is that we're going to create. So the way I need to do this is just type the word from space, and you'll notice that you're even getting type ahead in Visual Studio Code. That's because we have that Docker extension installed. Now, what is it we're going to install? We're going to install Ubuntu. So as I start typing, you'll see all those different images that you saw on the website. And notice this one here, just the one spelled Ubuntu, says official. Okay, so that's the one we want. And now we also want the specific version of Ubuntu. Now you might be saying, well, Bill, where'd you get this from? Well, I've been doing a lot of research on this, and this is the one I came up with. You could type a colon here and type control space and see all the different versions that are available. You could even type the word latest, and it will always get the latest version. But what I want to do is type 22.04 and press return. And then I'm just going to press return once more. So there's two lines, one of them's blank. And I'm going to save this file. That's Command S or Control S on your keyboard. And actually, that's all we need to do to build an Ubuntu image. Now, We haven't set up Jekyll or anything like that yet, but what I want to do is actually test and see if this works. Now, I thought it would be fun for us to watch this get built. So I opened up the Docker desktop on the right-hand side, and then I have Visual Studio Code open up on the left. So what I'm going to do is in Visual Studio Code, make sure a Docker file is saved. I'm just going to go ahead and close it, type Command or Control-Shift-P, and I'm going to type the words open folder in container. Now, I know you can't see all the text open folder in container because I zoomed in quite a bit in Visual Studio Code, but it does say that. So let's go ahead and select that. Now it's going to ask me what Docker file I want to open up, what folder I want to open up. You should still be in that repo that you created, GitHub Pages with Docker. If you're not, find your way over there. Remember, we put that on our desktop, and you'll see Docker file. You can't select it, but that's okay. Click the Open button, and now it's going to ask us how we want to open it. From a predefined container, you might be saying, Bill, how come we don't just use a predefined container? Well, at least as I'm creating this video, there is no GitHub predefined container. Now, the other option is Docker file. So I'm going to go ahead and select that. Now it's asking if there's all these other features we want installed. We don't want any of those. So just go ahead and click OK. And now it says that it's adding that and it's creating the container. As a matter of fact, if I click on that little blue text there, I can see a log. There it goes. It's not a whole lot to see because of the way this is all stretched out, but you can see these blue cylons here down at the top and the bottom going along and creating this image and container. It's actually creating multiple images and multiple containers. Here I'm looking at images right now on the right-hand side, and then I can come over here to the left and I see containers, and also I have some volumes here as well. So it's done. Now, how do I know it's done? Right now, I see all this text over here, and as a matter of fact, the text might even refresh. But those blue lines, those little cylons that we saw earlier, they're not there anymore, so I know that this is complete. The other reason for why I know it's complete is because over here, it says dev container existing Docker file on the bottom left. This is going to be a very helpful little tool for you, is to use this green area. If I click on it, you will always see some useful, helpful menu items that it will pull up. But right now, I'm just going to go ahead and get rid of this terminal. I'm going to click the little trash icon to kill the terminal window. And now we know we're in a Docker container. Now that you know how to create a Docker file and how to find the original image for an operating system, the next thing you want to do is add all the details to add Jekyll and Ruby onto the computer. Now, to do that, you need to install a whole bunch of other prerequisites in that Docker container. Now, if I were to go through and type all of these for you and explain every single one of them, it would probably be a few hours. And also, the minute I send this video, something's going to change. Some other little minor prerequisite will be needed, or someone will say, you know what, we support this newer version of Jekyll, and then it's all out of date. So I've decided I'm going to put it in this gist. GitHub gists are little code snippets. You can see here I have this little heading here, and the URL is on the screen right now. So you can go ahead and type that. And of course, that URL is in the description on the video as well. What I'm going to do is keep this up to date with, for example, this README file, and there will be more content there. And you're going to search for Docker file. Now, the file name may not be Docker file, but you'll see Docker file in the words. There's another very important one down below, but we won't get into that one quite yet. So what I want to do is get the code for the Docker file. So over here on the top right of that area, we can click raw. I'm going to go and type Control A or Command A on my keyboard to select everything. And then I'll type Command or Control C to copy that into my clipboard. Now I'm back in Visual Studio Code. What I want to do is open that Docker file, and I'm going to do a Command or Control A to select everything, and then press Delete or Backspace on my keyboard. Now the Docker file is empty, and I'm going to do a Command or Control V to paste all that code in, and I'll even press a little return key at the end just for good measure. Okay, let's come up to the top here. I'm not going to walk you through everything, but I am going to give you a basic overview as to what's going on. First of all, you'll notice all these hashes throughout, and it's in green text on my screen anyway, those are all just comments. These are things that I've provided to you to help you learn how to use the file. Now, you'll see there's that Ubuntu 2204, that first line that we created the first time. That's right there. Now, after Ubuntu is installed, it actually has a package manager called apt. We want to make sure that the package manager is up to date. So that's what that run command is. Run just runs a little terminal window, and it runs this command, and then it adds a layer to the Docker image that we're creating. That means every time you see the run command, you're going to add another layer to your Docker image, which requires more disk space and more memory. So with this Docker image, I tried to find the right balance of layers and flexibility. So this is a run apt get update. Now we're going to use apt get to install the other things that we need to put onto Ubuntu. And that's where this run command comes in. And you can see we can do one run command and say install all these things like git and curl and so on. Now you might go through this list and say, you know what, Bill, I don't think I need this, or I think I need some other utility. Go ahead and add them. I just have each one of these on a different line by using this Unix convention of a backslash. So I could have typed git space curl space autoconf, so on and so forth. But that line would become really long and complicated. So that's what those backslashes are. It's just allowing us to have everything on its own line, but it's all under this one run command. Okay, after all of these items have been installed in that Ubuntu image, it's now time to move on to getting Ruby set up. So what I'm going to do here is set up some environment variables. These are things that we can use within our Docker file. So for example, here's an environment variable called Ruby version. I set that to 3.1.2, and you can see down here later in the Docker file, it gets used multiple times. So instead of having to remember to go through and make that version number change multiple times, we just use an environment variable. And so a few of those have been set up. Now what we're going to do is install what's called rbenv. This is a Ruby environment manager. Now I see lots of videos and lots of documentation that just say, hey, if you want to use Jekyll and GitHub Pages, just install the latest version of Ruby and you're fine. Well, I find that not to be the case. So that's why I'm using very specific versions of Ruby. And if you want to see my backup on any of these, you'll see URLs throughout where I'm actually referring to why I do these things. But here we're running git clone and we're getting the RB environment set up. And you'll see these and signs. These are basically saying, run this command, then run this command, and then run this command. So again, we have one layer with lots of commands being run. Finally, we finish installing Ruby, and then we install Jekyll. And in this case, we're installing Jekyll 3.9.3, because that's what this URL right here says at the creation of this video, that it's that version. If GitHub decides to change what version of Jekyll they support for GitHub Pages, then you would change this version number. And of course, I'll try my best to keep it up to date as well. So let's go ahead and save the Docker file. And I'm going to go ahead and close the Docker file. Now I'm going to type Command-Shift-P or Control-Shift-P on my keyboard. And I'm going to type rebuild. And you can see here it says rebuild container. So I'm going to go ahead and select that. Okay, I just came back and it is done. Now I know that it's done because those blue lines, those blue cylons aren't animating anymore. And so I can just go ahead and kill the terminal window with this little trash can. Okay, let's recap what we've done so far. We've created a Docker file and we've defined what we want in our Docker image by saying Ubuntu, this version of Ruby, that version of Jekyll, and so on and so forth. Then the dev containers extension in Visual Studio Code built that Docker image for us. And also for free, we got a Docker container. So now what we have is a place to start working on Jekyll, but there's something suspiciously missing from our repo here. We don't actually have a Jekyll website. So what we'll do is go back over here to that gist, and I put it back up on the screen for you for a moment, just in case. And what we are going to do this time is scroll down and look for a file with a .sh extension. There it is. Run once after dockerfile.sh. The file name doesn't really matter because you can call it whatever you want. What we care about is the contents. What this is going to do is basically create the Jekyll site for us. And I'm just going to go ahead and click on the raw icon, the raw button, do our same thing, Command or Control A, Command or Control C to copy it to the clipboard. And then over here in Visual Studio Code, we'll make sure that we're in the Explorer. We'll right click, choose New File, and I'm just going to call this run-once.sh. Again, it doesn't matter the file name. And now I'm going to paste that code in here. And I'll just say save. Just like last time, I'm going to walk you through this file real quick. So what it's going to do is first display the Ruby version and then display the Jekyll version that's installed in our Docker container. Next, we're going to create the new Jekyll site. In this case, it'll be a new site with the Jekyll Minima theme. If you don't want that, you can come over here and type --blank, and it will create a blank site. But we're going to use the Minima theme, so I'm going to erase that. When you create a new Jekyll site, it actually creates what's called a .gitignore file. We like .gitignore because we don't want to have a whole bunch of junk collected in our Git repo that we don't need. So we can use .gitignore. However, Jekyll's gitignore isn't as complete as mine. So my code says if there's a .gitignore file, delete it and then create a new one. That's right here. And if I scroll down, we can see it adds a number of different entries into that .gitignore file. By the way, this .dsstore is mostly for Mac users, but I put that in there because it can get very annoying when you're working with Jekyll. The next thing that we're going to do is inform the Jekyll site that it is working with GitHub Pages. And once again, I provide the URLs and all that good stuff. But right now, as of the creation of this video, GitHub Pages is at version 2.2.8. So that's why that's there. If you need to change that version, then you can go ahead and do that. And of course, I'll do my best to keep the site up to date as well, the gist. Then finally, there's this technology we need to add that used to come with Ruby. It doesn't anymore. And we're going to add WebBrick. And then finally, we'll go ahead and install and update our bundle packages to make sure they're all set. And then we will initiate Git with the main branch. And finally, we'll present some instructions that explain what to do next. I'm going to go ahead and save this file. And I'm also going to close the file. Now I'll press Control backtick on my keyboard, and that will open the terminal window. Just going to move this down a little bit here. And in this terminal window, I just want to point out that make sure that you do have the dev container open. You should see that in the bottom left. And also take a look at the folder here. See how it says root at and then this random number? That usually means you're in a Docker container. If I were on my Mac right now and I was not in a Docker container, it would have said something like Bill's MacBook Pro or something along those lines. So here we have the terminal window and we're ready to type our command. I will type sh space, and then I'm going to type run-once.sh and press return. You can see it's displaying the Ruby version. It's displaying the Jekyll version. It's creating the Jekyll site. It's updating all of the bundle items that we need. And it's doing all those things that I just mentioned. In just a moment, if there's no errors, I should have this section here that says done configuring your Jekyll site with some instructions. And take a look over here. We now have a posts folder with a Jekyll post, so you can actually do blogging using Jekyll. We have an index file. That's our home page. And so much more. So there's a whole bunch of stuff going on here. This video is not meant to teach you how to use Jekyll. I have plenty of videos on my Jekyll and GitHub playlist. But here, we are going to just learn a few things about how to get it set up. So you can see here that underneath this done section, it says modify the base URL and URL in your config.yaml file. So let's open this underscore config.yaml file and let's locate those two entries. Here they are right here. So it says the base URL is /GitHub Pages with Docker. Because remember, we're going to push this up to GitHub with that URL in it. So I'll go ahead and paste that in. And then it says the URL is, and it has us copy this. So let's copy this and I'll walk you through it. I'll put that into the URL line. It says https your GitHub username.github.io. So your username, you'll just have to go to GitHub and look that up. I happen to know mine is Bill Raymond. And then .github.io is GitHub Pages. Instead of .github.com, it's .github.io. Okay, so let's go ahead and save that config file and close it. And I'll just pop the browser open on the right-hand side so we can watch our site build. Cool. So we did step number 1 here with modifying the base URL and URL. Now it's saying run Jekyll for the first time by typing bundle exec Jekyll serve. So I'm going to just go ahead and copy all of this text. And I'll scroll down to the bottom of the page here. And I will paste that code in and press return. There, it generated the site. And you can see here's a server address. The server address always ends in 4000 unless you modify it in some way. So I'm going to do a command click. It might be a control click on Windows. And there, it opened up the website. And you can see it's using the Minima theme. And there's Welcome to Jekyll. That's that post that I showed you in that post folder. Cool. We actually have a working site now. I'm going to remove the browser so we can get back into Visual Studio Code. There. So in the terminal window, I will just type Control-C to stop our server from running. And scroll back up here to our little green done section. And what else does it say? It says, commit all of your changes to Git locally, and then publish your site to a GitHub repo. So let's go over here to the Explorer. And I'm going to go ahead and just kill this terminal window for the moment because I can walk you through the rest of it. As you can see, we have one changed file. So I'm just going to go ahead and commit that file. So I'll do Command or Control-Shift-P, type commit all, press return, and then say update config, and press return. There. So at this point, we now have a working Jekyll site on our computer, and we're running it in Docker. GitHub will automatically build our site for us and update GitHub Pages anytime we push new code. All right, so let's start the process. We'll do a Command to Control-Shift-P, and we'll type the word publish, and search for publish to GitHub. When you find that, press return. Now, if you have never done this before, you may find that you have to log in to GitHub first, and there might be a few extra steps. I'm already logged in, so I can just come over here. You can see it wants to publish to private or public repo. I'm going to choose public repository. Now, all we did at this point in GitHub was publish the repo, which means that we created this folder, GitHub Pages with Docker, but we never actually pushed the code up. So we have to do that now. We'll do another Command or Control-Shift-P, and we'll type the word push and press return. There. So we created the repo, and then we put the code there. Let's head over to GitHub and see what that looks like. Here I am in my list of repositories. I'm actually going to refresh that. And I can see that there is this new one called GitHub Pages with Docker. I'll go ahead and select that. And there's all the code that we created. Now I want this to be available via GitHub Pages so I can see the website. I'm going to come over here to the settings for my repo. Over on the left-hand side, you'll find a Pages option. Select that. Then it's going to say, how do you want to build and deploy? There's two options. There's one for deploy from a branch and another for deploying with GitHub Actions. I'm actually working on a video for GitHub Actions. This is for traditional GitHub Pages deploy from branch. So we're going to stick with deploy from branch. And then with branch over here, we're going to select that and choose main. If your default branch was master or something else, go ahead and select that, but I'm choosing main. And then when you come over here, it says, do you want to get the root folder or the docs folder? And we're going to say root and go ahead and select save. There. So let's come back up here to our repo. And you see this little orange dot? This is telling us that it's actually building the site. And we're going to look at that in just a little bit, but we won't focus on that right now. I will tell you, you won't be able to see your GitHub Pages site until you see a green checkbox next to that. Okay, over here where it says About with this little cog, go ahead and select that. And it's asking for a description and website. What I am caring about here is this checkbox that says Use your GitHub Pages website, and then click Save Changes. You'll see this little About area here, and now it says it will go to billraymond.github.io/GitHub Pages with Docker. And now you can see I have this green checkbox next to that commit. That means that my website is up and running. So I'll go ahead and select this link. And there we have it. It says, Welcome to Jekyll. And there we go. It's all up and running. There are many ways to update your site. I'm going to walk you through the workflow where you, 1, open the Docker container, 2, modify the code, 3, push that code to GitHub, and then we'll just watch the actions that actually create GitHub pages on our behalf. Let's see what we've got here. I have Visual Studio Code on the left. I have GitHub with my repo open on the right. And also I can't see the code unless I click View Code because I'm in a mobile version. I've stretched the browser too thin. And then also on the right on this other tab, I have our Jekyll GitHub Pages site running. And this is also in mobile mode. You see the menu is up here now in this hamburger. All right, so we're going to make a very simple change. I'm coming over here to Visual Studio Code, and I'm going to do a command backtick on my keyboard. And this is something you're going to do all the time whenever you want to test and run your code. You'll type bundle exec Jekyll serve -- live reload and press return. Now, Visual Studio Code might display this open in browser button. Do not do that. Instead, close that dialog because it won't open the full URL. Instead, locate that port 4000 URL and then use Control or Command click to open that in your browser. And now you can see this is our local development environment. So I'm going to go ahead and just bring this terminal window down so we can focus on our development piece and choose index.md. Now here, I'm just going to type some text. I'll type hello world, ! and save. Down here at the bottom, every single time I save, because we use that live reload, not only does Jekyll rebuild the site, but also it refreshes the browser. So you can see there's that hello world text right there. So now let's say that I want this to display here on my GitHub Pages site. If I refresh this right now, I'm not going to see hello world up there. That's because it's only working locally on our computer at the moment. So this is what we need to do. We need to come over here and commit our changes. So I'll do Command or Control Shift P, commit all, and then I'll give a message saying added hello world to index and press return. Now we've made that change and committed it locally. Now we just need to push that up to GitHub. This is a fairly common process that you would follow. So I'll just do a Command or Control Shift P and type push for git push and press return. I'm going to go ahead and expand our browser window here. And let's take a look at what's going on our repo. I'm going to refresh the page. And you can see there is that orange dot saying something's happening. I'm going to click on that. And you can see here's that change. And it says hello world. But let's actually see what that thing is that's happening. If we come over here to actions, you can see that every single time you push your change up, a little GitHub Pages action runs. This is actually created and developed by the folks over at GitHub. And if you select that, you can actually watch your site being built. The first thing it does is it uses Jekyll to build the site. The next thing it does is it deploys the site to GitHub Pages and simultaneously reports that build status. So now that we have the 3 checks here, and we come back to our repo, we'll also see the check here for our commit change. So now let's come over to our Jekyll site that is live. So this is at github.io, and refresh that page. And now we'll see hello world. All right, I'm in Visual Studio Code and I start adding my content like this hello world. I might even be creating more posts. Then I look into the post and I say, I'd really like it if this title was a different color or something like that. So you come over here to the post and you open it up, and it's a markdown file. So it's just text. There's no HTML layouts or anything like that. As a matter of fact, I don't even see how welcome to Jekyll gets displayed. Of course, I can see that in the title up here in the YAML component, but I don't actually see how it gets displayed. That's because it's all defined in a layout file, and that layout file is called post. But I don't see a layouts folder anywhere here. Also, there's got to be HTML at some point that I can change so I can modify the style for this welcome to Jekyll. Where's that? Well, it turns out we are using what's called a gem-based theme. Whenever we install Jekyll and we allow it to install the default theme, then that is called Minima. And that Minima theme is a gem-based theme. As a matter of fact, most themes for Jekyll are gem-based themes. That means that when the developer makes their updates, they can push that up, and then when you type bundle update the next time, you'll get the latest version. But for my money, I want to be able to update the theme anytime I want, right inside of my repo alongside the rest of my code. So how do I go about doing that? I can do what's called overriding the theme. So let's switch gears and just go to Visual Studio Code and see how to do that. There. So now I have an empty terminal window open, and I'm going to go ahead and type bundle info --path minima. Now I know I'm using the Minima theme because I built the Jekyll site using the default. However, if I need to, I can go into the gem file and I can see that there's that Minima theme right there. Or I can open my _config.yaml file and I can scroll down and look for theme, and there you can see Minima. So that's how I know that we're using Minima. So I'll go ahead and press return. And what we'll return is a folder that I can copy. Now, just so you're aware, this folder is located in our Docker container. So I'm going to copy that into my clipboard. First, I'll clear the screen, and then I'm going to type the letters CP and space, and that means copy. Then I'll go ahead and paste all of that text in. I'll press the right arrow, and then I'll type a /dot. What that dot means is don't copy over this folder Minima 2.5.1. Don't create that folder here. Just copy the contents of it, space, dot. And that dot says copy it into the root of our GitHub repo, space, -p, space, -r. Now the P means bring over the file attributes, and the R means recursive. What that means is just bring over not only the files contained within that folder, but all the subfiles and subfolders as well. And by the way, I have Minima 2.5.1. Yours might be slightly different. That's okay. So long as it works on GitHub Pages, you're good to go. So I'll go ahead and press return. And all of a sudden, now you see a whole bunch of new folders got created and files. You can see here's that includes. And you can see here's that layouts and SAS and so forth. Okay, cool. So we have all of that in our system now. So if I were to just run this GitHub Pages site, it will look exactly like it did before. There won't be any difference. So I want to go ahead and clear this, and I'm going to bring my browser back online. And in that terminal window, I'll type bundle exec Jekyll serve -- live reload and press return. And I'll open this link, and you can see there we are. And now I'm going to open up this welcome to Jekyll post. And remember, I wanted to modify the title for any new post. I want to make it look a little bit more of a pop. So what I'm going to do is do what I did before. I'm going to come back over here to the post, and I see, okay, it uses layout : post. So I'll go to the layouts folder, and I'll find post. There. Now I can see there's an H1 that has a class of post title, and that class is really important. That's the thing that I'm going to style. So I'll just copy that. I'll come over here to the search bar over in Explorer, and I'll paste post title in. Now I'll come over here to the layout. You can see it's a SAS file, and I'll select post-title. And there that is. This is where it styles it. I'll just go ahead and type background color : black, semicolon. And because we're doing a live reload, if I save the file, you can see there's a black background now. And then I'll just do color : yellow, with another semicolon at the end, and save that. There. Now I have a fully different styled site. Now you can see the Y goes underneath, and we could modify the spacing and all that good stuff, but we're not going to do that in this video. The point is that now you'll see all of the files that you can edit, so you can make the site kind of your own. So how do we make all this work now? So we can go ahead and close this down. I'm going to kill the terminal, and I'm going to leave search and go back to Explorer. We have all these new files and folders in our repo now. So let's go ahead and do a Command-Shift-P, commit all, and then I'll just say override minima theme and press return. There. Now I'll go ahead and push all of these changes up to GitHub. So Command or Control-Shift-P, push, and press return. So here I am on my GitHub Pages with Docker repo. I can see that that includes layouts, SAS, all those folders are now inside my repo, and I have the orange dot here saying that the page is being built. Now, one of the things that I do want to point out with this particular thing here is that usually it takes not more than about a minute or two for this to finish up. But there are times when it can take anywhere from 15 minutes to half an hour if, things are really busy on GitHub. And if you're doing things that just seem like they should be processing right away and they don't, sometimes this GitHub Pages build can go down for a little bit. I've actually experienced that while I was creating the training video, and it took about an hour before things got back up and running again. So don't be shocked if that happens. All right, so this is working. I'm going to go to our website, and I can see that the website still looks great. Now let's go to Welcome to Jekyll. And there we have that black background with the yellow text. Okay, I'm going to show you just how drastic we can be with this. Let's assume that you have been updating your site and you're constantly pushing it up to GitHub after you're done. So you really haven't lost your site. It's still up on GitHub. But maybe you got a new computer, or you accidentally deleted your files, or the Docker container needed to be rebuilt because you accidentally deleted it. I'm going to show you a worst case scenario. Here I am on the Explorer on the left-hand side, or Finder. I'm going to select this. You can see this is our repo right here. I'm going to move it to the trash. I'm going to delete it. And then I'm going to come over here to Docker Desktop. I'll select all of the containers. If any are running, I'm just going to stop them, which I did already. So I'm going to go ahead and delete them forever. And then I'm going to come to Images, select all of them, and delete all of those. And then I'm going to come over here to Volumes, select all of them, and delete them. Now I'm back in Visual Studio Code, and I have nothing to open. I can't open the Docker file. I can't open the repo. So what do I do? What are the steps to get back to where I was at before? I'm going to do a Command or Control-Shift-P. I'm going to do a git clone. I'm going to clone from GitHub, and then I'm going to choose my GitHub Pages with Docker repo. You can see that's the first one here. And then I'll go ahead and throw that back on the desktop just like I did before. And I'll open the cloned repository, and there's the files. Now you'll get this message up that says, hey, this is a dev container. Do you want to reopen it container? You may not get this dialog because you might have turned off dialogues. So if you didn't get that, this is how you do it manually. You do Command or Control Shift P, and you say open folder in container and press return. Well, once again, just choose that same exact repo. It should already be open. I'll click the open button and it will open this dev container. And of course, what it's doing right now is it's rebuilding the entire Docker image and then putting our code into a Docker container. You might want to press pause while you wait for that to happen. It could take a while, and I'll be back when mine is complete. Okay, it looks like we're in the dev container. I can see that on the bottom left. It says dev container existing Docker file. And I'm just going to point a few things out here. Remember when we had this Docker file? This is the first thing that we ran. I'm going to close this dialog here. This is the first thing that we ran. And remember, we installed Git and curl and a whole bunch of other things. We installed Ruby, and then we installed Jekyll, but never created the site. That's what the Docker file did. And then we had this run once shell file. And what this did was it created a new Jekyll site. Well, we don't need to do that because we already have a Jekyll site. And it went and did the whole git ignore thing. We don't need to do that because we already have a git ignore file. And then it also initialized Git. We don't need to do that because we cloned it from a Git site. So that's already done. So the only things that didn't happen was we didn't add that webRick, but that, by the way, came down from this gem file. So that's good. The only thing that we did not do is a bundle install and a bundle update. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go ahead and do a control backtick on my keyboard. And I'm going to try running that bundle exec Jekyll serve -- live reload and press return. You see, I get a whole bunch of error messages. It says run bundle install to install the missing gems. So I'll go ahead and clear the screen, and I'll do that. I'm going to type bundle install. I'll clear the screen again and type bundle update. I'll clear the screen one more time, and now I'll type bundle exec Jekyll serve -- live reload and press return. There. Now I should be able to open up my site. I'll Command or Control click on that URL, and there it says hello world. Remember, we added that. And if I come over here to welcome to Jekyll, we also added that styling. So there, we're back up and running. There are a lot of people out there that use GitHub Pages, and they freely share their sites. So you could maybe get a copy and use theirs, or maybe you want to collaborate with them. So I'm going to show you how to do this, but also use Docker, because not all GitHub Pages repos are going to have a Docker file in them. So let's do this. I'm going to come up to the search bar, and I'm going to search for my good friend, Hipster Bill Raymond, and press return. I can see there's a user, and I'll select Hipster Bill Raymond. And now I see that they have this My Rockin' GitHub Pages site. I'll select that. And yeah, it looks like this is a GitHub Pages site. And it also does not have a Docker file in it. But let me just check it out. I'm going to click on this About link and see how it looks. This looks great. You know, it has this nice sort of green and gray background. Looks cool. So what I'm going to do is one of two things. One, I could download this zip file and it'll just get the main branch, and I can kind of start fresh and clean without this being attached in any way to this user. Or I can just fork it. And that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to come up here to the top right area where it says fork and select that. Now it's going to ask me my repository name on my account, and I'll just leave it at my Rockin' GitHub Pages site. And I'm just going to say copy the main branch only. Don't copy all the other changes that person's been doing. I'll go ahead and click Create Fork. And there, now you can see this website is here on my account. And I can come over here and take a look. It's all the same things. However, there's a few things going on that we need to address. First of all, this URL here is still pointing to Hipster Bill Raymond. So I'm going to click the cog icon. And I'm going to change this to billraymond.github.io and leave the URL the same. And click Save Changes. Next, I'm going to go to the Settings area and go down to the Pages area. And I'm going to make sure I have Deploy from Branch, as I did before. From main or master or whatever it is that you see there is the, if you will, the top root of the repo. Once again, we'll choose root as the folder and we'll save that there. And we'll come back up to my Rockin' GitHub Pages site and we'll see that orange dot is saying that, well, we're building the site for the first time on Bill Raymond's repo as opposed to Hipster Bill Raymond's repo. And there we have our green checkbox. So I'll come over here to the URL and see what happens. That looks okay. However, there is one problem. As we start coding and I start adding images or other things, I might run into a problem because if I take a look over here, I'm at billraymond.github.io in the URL. But if I come back to my code and I take a look at the config.yaml file, I can see the URL is still Hipster Bill Raymond. So I do need to modify that. And if I had changed the name of the repo, then I'd have to modify that too. So I'm going to edit that right now. I'm just going to remove that hipster part. There. Now it's my github.io. I'll commit that change. And I know GitHub Pages is already running, so we're good. We're good there. Now I'm in Visual Studio Code. So I'm going to do my Command or Control Shift P. I'm going to do a git clone from GitHub. And there's my Rockin' GitHub Pages site. I'll select that. And I'll put that on my desktop. And open it. Now, I can't just go in here and start running the Jekyll site because I don't have Jekyll or Ruby installed on my computer. I need this to be in a Docker file. That is why we're going to go to this gist, the same one we used before, and we will just go ahead and locate that Docker file, choose raw, select all with Control or Command A, copy it to our clipboard, and then when we're back here in Visual Studio Code, we'll right-click anywhere in the Explorer, choose New File, and type Docker file, again, one word with a capital D, and paste all of that text in. Remember, this is all set up for GitHub Pages. So if the person that created the site used some other version of Jekyll that it's not supported by GitHub Pages, and this isn't going to work. So you do want to reach out to them or at least verify with them. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and save the Docker file. Now I'll do my Command or Control Shift P. I'm going to commit all, and I'm going to type add Docker file. Next, I'll do my Command or Control Shift P once more and say open folder in container, press return, make sure that we're in our My Rockin' GitHub Pages folder, and I'll choose from Docker file, and no, we won't add any extra features, click OK, and Visual Studio Code will start building our Docker container. There, it's done. Now remember, because we just had to put in our Docker file and we already have the Jekyll site, there's only two things that we need to do before we can run it. And that's to do our command backtick, and that opens up the terminal window, and we type bundle install. And now I'm going to do bundle update. I'll clear my screen and type bundle exec Jekyll serve -- live reload and press return. Now I can select the server address, Command or Control click, and there it is. So I'll just make a quick little change here. I'll go to the index and I'll say, instead of welcome to my Rockin' site, I'll say welcome to Bill Raymond's Rockin' site and save that. You can see it changed over here on the right. I will now quit the terminal window, kill that, and I'll do my Command or Control Shift P, commit all, update site, and then I'll say Command or Control Shift P, push, and press return. And we'll head back to GitHub to just make sure our changes took place. Okay, we're back in GitHub, and it looks like we're in our orange state. That little action's running. So I'll wait for the checkbox. And there it is. So now we can go over here to the URL and see what happens. There, I can see, welcome to Bill Raymond's Rockin' site. We're good. We have now taken another GitHub Pages site that was not based on Docker, brought it down to our computer, added the Docker file, and all we did was run bundle install and bundle update. Then we could run the site locally and push our changes up to GitHub. Thank you for watching this video. If you want more like this, please like, comment, and click the bell to support my channel.